I can't believe that today's the last day of June. It seems to have flown by, and we've had a right mixture of weather, like today, once again blowing a gale, and that temperature really has dropped down, which doesn't affect plants in greenhouse too much, but outside everything's going to slow down for a little bit. Hopefully in July that temperature picks back up, because we're going to need it. We're in summer now, and we know that summer in the UK doesn't last very long, so before you know it, those days are going to get shorter and it's going to start and get a little bit cooler. We're still potting things on where we can find them. I'm still sowing seeds because we've still got a few things to do in July. Nothing like it were in June, but I'm still going around looking at these plants that we've got in containers, like this one. Peppers in 2-litre containers. They've come on really well, and I did leave a lot of these just in 2-litre containers, and I really should have moved them on to something bigger. What I'm doing is I'm selecting a couple of these peppers that we've got in these 2-litre pots, and I've decided I'm going to give them a new lease of life. I'm going to move them into something a little bit bigger, and hopefully we can get some bigger peppers out of it by doing that. This one's got a few buds on top, nothing major. We've still got some aphids on these plants. I just think that's a year-long thing. You never seem to get rid of them, but while ever they're outside, ladybirds and wasps will pick those aphids off, and they'll cut those numbers down enough for it not to damage your plant. At least that's what's happening this year. Yesterday was quite a busy day for us because it was sunny, we had a little bit of wind, but not like today. So we spent the entire day cutting grass, and you've seen that it's quite a big garden. So that was an whole afternoon's job. We went round greenhouses doing lots of weeding. Basic maintenance, just to keep things looking tidy. But now today, unfortunately, we're back in greenhouse because it's not fit to do anything out there. I've got some of these containers, and they're 10 or 15 litres, I can't remember which. They're a good size, and they've got lots and lots of drainage holes in bottom. So I thought what I'd do is put a couple of these peppers we've got into this bigger container and see how they get on. I'm hoping to get a couple that become quite a big bush through July, and maybe a few bigger peppers. We have got quite a lot of plants at the moment. We've got a greenhouse that's full of them. It's got around 30 pepper plants because we just used it for that reason, and one cucumber plant, which is doing quite well. Then we've got a few outside in container garden, and then these. I think we've got some in the region are around 50 plants on go this year. So we've got a bit pepper mad. Well, I wanted to do that because we don't have to grow huge peppers. If we do, brilliant. But if we only get quite small ones, they're just perfect for cutting in half, and then you can preserve them in jars, which is something else we'll end up doing on Cooking Channel at some point. Obviously not just yet, because peppers haven't reached the point of harvest just yet. But we like to get as much on go as we can and preserve everything possible. So even though we're looking for some good sized peppers this year, I'll still be happy with quite a few small ones. So this plant, it's all been roughed up as you just saw. Loosen those roots off a little bit to help it grow more. And if you wanted to, you could actually pinch the tops of your plants off, but that's better done earlier in season. What that does is it creates extra side growth on your peppers, so you end up with a more bushy plant. But we didn't do that this year, and it's a bit too late to be doing it at the moment because the tops of these stems have thickened out quite a bit, and we have got little peppers growing on there. For the moment, I'll just be putting it in this container. Make sure it's in nice and firm, and then add a little bit more compost around that edge. This plant's now got more than twice the space to grow, so we're expecting a better result out of that. But we'll see, and I'll do a couple of these, and then we can compare them to what we get off of the ones in 2-litre pots and see if there is that much of a difference because if there isn't, we might as well leave them in the smaller pots and take lots of little baby peppers. Just going to put some feed around the base of this plant as well, some of that quick release fertiliser. And then I'll top that off with a mixture of liquid seaweed and tomato food. So that's giving this plant not only more space to grow, but a massive boost in nutrients. And for today, we'll keep this indoors because we don't want it outside in that wind. Because in this area, we do seem to get a lot of windy days. Anything that you put outside is susceptible to wind burn. And it won't kill your plant, but it makes it look a bit of a mess because all your leaves start to turn white on edges and then eventually they'll go brown and die off. So we've moved a few peppers back into the greenhouse today and a couple of those tomato plants in little containers, which is the beauty of doing container gardening. When you get days that aren't really nice like today, windy, drizzle and a bit of a drop in temperature, we can move them indoors and protect them. So that's that plant setup. And hopefully we'll get some bigger sweet bell peppers off this one. And like I said, I'll do another, but you don't need to watch me do that. Then I have to move back onto this plant. We keep putting this off and putting it off, and now it's just reached critical point where the plant is huge. And it's in such a tiny container. And we're going to end up with problems with this plant getting root bound. But apart from that, if it's in a pot this small and it can't grow its roots, it's going to stress that plant out, and then you'll not get no fruit off it anyway. So we need to do something about it before we start getting flowers on it. Because we're looking forward to getting some more of those miniature pumpkins. Bright orange baby pumpkins as big as tennis balls. Also edible. Just taking off a couple of leaves from the bottom of this plant. But then it's a choice of what we do. Do we move it to a bigger container, or do we just put it in ground somewhere? We could put it outside in container garden, but obviously weather being as it is at the moment, it's not a good idea to do that, moving it from a comfortable warm greenhouse to that harsh wind and cooler temperatures. There's a couple of leaves on the bottom as well, I noticed, that are starting to go a bit off. That one, that's not going to do anything anymore. So let's not invite slugs to us plants before we even start getting any fruit off them. So it's decision time today for the Jack the Little plant. Before I do that, I want to show you those Italian plum tomatoes that we've got growing in other greenhouse. We looked at them a few days ago, but in that short space of time, you'd be surprised at how much growth those tomatoes have put on. You can see we've been doing quite a bit of tidying up in this garden yesterday. All that grass has been cut. We've done a lot of weeding. And everything just looks that little bit tidier. This beer garden bit, that was all cut as well. And that's why it takes virtually all day to do it, because it's a big area to clean. And beyond that edging at the bottom is also another part, and that's where that container garden is. Quite a lot of ground to cover. And I've moved a lot of these plants up here now. We've got salads up here just to keep them out of that sun so they don't wilt. And then we've got those plants that had poorly leaves on them, just to separate things from everywhere else. I'm watching this like an hawk. That is almost ready to pick as first cherry tomato at season. So I'll put it in here and I'll keep an eye on them birds, because as soon as they see a red ripe little fruit, they'll be at it. And that's mine. So that's ripened overnight. I'll probably pick that tomorrow. But this plant doesn't look as bad, which is great considering the amount of fruit that's on it. So maybe taking all those leaves off and boosting it with extra feed worked. And that's exactly what we've done to this one as well. Cut back dead leaves and getting it a boost of feed. So far so good. We've got all the shallots in there. They're all drying out. So I'll give them a couple more days. We can pop those indoors and start pickling. Probably need to put another brace around this piece of tree trunk as well. It's one that we've seen in somebody's garden, and they kindly cut us a slice of this tree trunk that looked like it was smiling. So we keep trying to save that as long as possible. It's not going to last forever, but maybe I'll brace it again. See if we can keep it together. That T-Rex plant's put on loads of growth over it last week. It's a huge plant. Pretty impressive. When you put your hand over a leaf, then you can see just how big these leaves are. We'll get out at rain for a bit. They're the peppers that I brought in for the moment. Another cherry tomato, that taller sweet million tomato plant that we still haven't put an extra support into. I'll do that this afternoon. A couple of small cherry fall plants, which are dwarf tomato plants. And then we've got all these peppers. I just don't want these plants getting windburn. This one's got a nice little pepper growing on it at the moment. And so's that one. But it's these we came to look at. Italian plum tomatoes. And we've been thinning all these back, breaking off the bottom leaves, taking away suckers and tidying them up. And same with ones on this side. And recently we started getting fruit on a couple of these plants, but I'll show you what they look like now. That is a lot of tomatoes on this plant, and they've put on some good size. And then next to it we've got another one. They really seem to be growing very quickly, these, which is brilliant. We've got another little one just coming there, and then more flowers coming at the top. But they've really shot up, so can't wait for some of these to start and ripen. But for a small plant, that's a lot of fruit. I was thinking about putting that Jack Be Little plant in here, just at that far end like we've done in other greenhouse. And if I wanted to, I could just trail it across that bench, keep it off at floor. And it wouldn't take 2 minutes just to pop it in there. We have got a tomato plant that's quite close to it, but as always we just keep taking leaves away and those little side shoots at the same time. So we could put it in there if we wanted. There's just enough space to get that plant in, and to be honest it needs to go somewhere. Well, after a bit of umming and ahhing, I've decided I'm going to put it in there. I just think it'll do a lot better if we put it somewhere like this rather than outside, because it's constantly windy. Oh, nice big hole. And then we'll get this plant out and have a look, see exactly what the situation is. And as I thought, we are starting to get a few tangling roots. It's not extreme at the moment. This plant's going to be a lot better off in ground. I'm just going to pop it in like that. Trying to keep this upright as well. We don't want to damage this plant before we get started. Just filling around that bottom. I need to offer some support for that plant, and I've got one of these. It's just an old wire shelf, but it is quite tall, so it goes above this bench. And I think that's going to be perfect, because we can just tie that plant to this as it grows, and then we'll transfer it onto that bench and see if we can get it to grow all the way across. So we'll just put it behind this plant. And if I just sink it in that ground a little bit, I can just lean it against that glass, and that's going to be good enough. But the main thing is, I can make sure this plant stays off at ground by just pinning it up there. So I'll just wrap that tie around and pull that plant in, and then we can tie it back like that. And just like you would with a tomato plant, very loosely around that stem. And we'll have to watch this plant as well, because it does produce more than one vine, which could shoot off in a completely different direction, just like butternut squash does. I'm going to put another one around this as well, just to pin that top. We'll mix up some tomato feed and a bit of seaweed as well, and we'll give this a right deep watering. So there we go, that's that plant in. It took us some time to make us mind up exactly what we're going to do with that plant, but at least now we have done, and we'll see how that gets on. Decisions. It took us a while, but we finally got there. We've decided to move a couple of these pepper plants from 2 litre pots into bigger ones, so we can do a comparison at end of season. But more importantly, we only had one Jack Be Little miniature pumpkin plant, and we've held off making that decision whether to put it in a container, in container garden, or just put it in ground in a greenhouse. And to be honest, that container garden is full of different types of things, so I think this year we can swerve that one. But more importantly, offer that plant a bit more protection, because these persisting winds and rains and variations in temperature at the moment. So we don't want to shock that plant too much. We don't want to subject it to windburn before it's even got established. So I think it was the right decision to just pop it in ground in that greenhouse, and then we'll try and grow it up that framework and then across that bench. Because hopefully by July everything will be out of that greenhouse once again. Because if the weather's not fit enough for your container plants to go outside in July, it never will be. But that job's done. We've got that little comparison test, and it's time to move on to new jobs, because tomorrow it's 1st of July. So we'll be doing the what to sow and grow in July video. And although there's not going to be a lot when it comes to sowing, there is a few things that we need to be doing to keep those harvests available all the way through, right until autumn. We'll cover that tomorrow. And if you want to see that video, then please hit that subscribe button, press that notifications bell, and we'll see you then. Take care.